What is up, TSFL Nation? I am back and I am watching the vice presidential debate. So I'm not really into politics like that. I just want to watch this debate because, the last presidential debate I was just laughing. So it should be fun.
Sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption by me or the other candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a discussion that is civil. These are tumultuous times, but we can and will have a respectful exchange about the big issues facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records. Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you impose new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Thank you, Susan. Well, the American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease. 1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the vice president and the president were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne.
Sarah, why?
And they knew what was happening and they didn't tell me. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare? They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that.
All right, guys, I'm back.
And that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe Biden is the best leader to do that. And frankly, this administration has forfeited their right to re-election based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, more than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth. For instance, our death rate is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy country? And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And Senator Harris, it's a privilege to be on the stage.
Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.
And our nation has gone through a very challenging time this year. But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. Before there were more than 5 cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China, President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and hysterical. But I can tell you, having led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resources support they needed. And we began, really, before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe, will have
Now, well, let me
tens of
finish.
millions
Let
of
them
doses of
finish.
vaccine before the end of this year. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. And quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. I think the American people know that this is a president who has put the health of America first, and the American people, I believe with my heart, can be proud of the sacrifices they have made. It's saved countless American lives.
Senator Harris, would you like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that loss. And you know, the vice president is the head of the task force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
So no, but Susan, this is important. I don't want to ask, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Yeah, you have 15 more seconds.
Here we go.
And then we'll give the vice president a
Thank you.
chance to.
So I want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm were you when your children couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to
You know,
respond.
there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one. And I want all of you to know that you'll always be in our hearts and in our prayers. But when you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the sacrifices the American people have made. The reality, if I may finish, Senator, the reality is...
Here comes the fireworks. This should be fun.
Everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people.
Who you guys voting for? Leave it in the
President Trump,
comment
I will tell you,
section.
has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd be through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. And that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also said to us if we did everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice
Now,
President
one
Pence.
life lost is too many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices that they have made, putting the health of their family and their...
I just don't want any more
doctors and
lockdowns.
nurses are first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
That's just the
Pence.
thing.
I'm gonna
Like,
speak up on behalf of what the American
things
people
gotta go back
Vice
to normal at some
President, you were in
point,
the front
but
row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago, what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior administration and congressional officials. No social distancing, few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID when you at the White House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know first. And President Trump and I have great confidence in the American people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United States goes on. The vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
Thank you, Vice President.
If I may say, at Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested for coronavirus, and it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly and routinely advise. The difference here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices in the best interest of their health. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care,
Thank you.
the Green New Deal, all government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth. You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which
to
we've
be a
always
leader,
done.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear, but they need to hear so they can protect themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people. So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talk about
It is asking too much of the people. That they would not be equipped with the information they need to help themselves to protect their parents and their
I'm sorry.
children.
Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
That's fine, I'm Kamala.
No, Senator Harris to me. For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci,
I ain't taking no
if the
vaccine
doctors
for me.
tell us that we
Nope.
should take it, I'll be the first
I'm letting
one to
other
take
people get it
Absolutely.
first,
But if Donald
because
Trump tells us I should take it, I'm not taking it.
nope.
Vice President,
I ain't
there have
taking
been a lot
it.
of repercussions from this pandemic.
I ain't
Recently,
taking
the
it.
president's diagnosis
Other
of
people's
COVID-19
gonna have to
has
take that
underscored the
before I even
importance
think about
of the
taking it.
job that
I'm
you
not.
hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That
Jeez.
already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on
Well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to go back,
See.
because the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year. We have 5 companies in phase
Yeah.
3 clinical trials.
It's fine. You
And we're
can.
right now producing.
It's just a
tens
live
of
stream.
millions
I'm
of
just
doses.
watching it. You can come by.
So, the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives, and your continuous
I ain't taking that vaccine. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what the scientists say. I don't care. I'm not taking that
The
vaccine.
reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, We actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic.
Must have lost your mind if you think I'm going to be taking that
The
vaccine.
swine flu arrived in the United States. Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans contracted the swine flu. If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the Strategic National Stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it. And I think American people, I'm going to say again, can be proud of what we have done. And Senator, please stop undermining confidence in a vaccine.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud, and she must be looking down on this. Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. And there I took on everything from transnational criminal organizations to the big banks that were taking advantage of homeowners to for-profit colleges that were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose, which is about lifting up the American people. And after the 4 years that we have seen of Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to go first?
Are they asking about his health?
Well, Susan, thank you. And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do believe it's emblematic of the prayers and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted by the coronavirus. But the care the President received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way of their President, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination. I never expected.
Oh, that was
to be on
nice.
the stage 4 years ago, so
Giving her a compliment.
The reality is, we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year, and the stakes have never been higher. But I
Thank you,
think the
thank you,
choice
Vice
has never been
President.
clearer.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond.
This
to
moderator's just
question I have,
saying,
which is,
thank
two
you,
voters
thank
have a
you.
right
That's
to
it.
know
I don't want to hear
more
this
detailed
rumbling
health
from you.
information about presidential candidates, and especially about presidents, especially when they're
But
facing
Chris
some-
Wallace, the last
Absolutely, and that's why
presidential,
Joe Biden has been
the last
so
debate, he was
incredibly
just,
transparent, and certainly by contrast,
he had to
the
deal with a
president
lot.
has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000?" And it was like, no, $750. We now
How do you
know
even get
Donald
this
Trump
stuff?
owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, owes money to, because the American people have a right to know what is influencing the President's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
The American people have a president who's a businessman, who's a job creator, who's paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's created tens of thousands of American jobs. And the president said those public reports are not accurate. And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
And
President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes, rolling back regulation,
Thank you,
unleashing
Vice
American
President.
energy, fighting for free and fair trade.
Why does she keep on saying thank you?
If Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a good
Right.
segue into our third
Great
topic,
segue.
which is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, blacks, and women. Senator Harris, the Biden-Harris campaign has proposed new programs to boost the economy, and you would pay for that new spending by raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations.
Dang, 4
Some
trillion?
economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial
Shoot.
ventures that fuel growth.
I know
and
rich
create
people don't
jobs.
like that.
Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing, which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that is about investing in infrastructure, something that Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes
Free.
$125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that
Okay.
if you have student loan debt, it's cut by
Cool.
$10,000. That's how Joe Biden thinks about the economy, which is it's about investing in the people of our country as opposed to
So
passing
college is
taxes
going, community
which have
college
the
is going to be
benefit
free
of
under
letting
Joe
American
Biden, apparently.
corporations go offshore to do their business.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been.
So basically, the government's going to be paying for community college
The
for
latest
people.
economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be
I don't think
braced
that's gonna
for
be
an
the
economic
case.
comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. So when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of 4 had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hard-working Americans, the average household income for a family of 4 increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really remarkable to think, Susan. I mean, right after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulations.
My thing is, who's going to pay for the taxes? Well, no, not the taxes. The free community college, though. That's the thing. I don't know how that's going to be paid for. Because you know how much tuition you got to pay for that? That's just like a lot of money.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands.
I heard about this Green Deal too, and so I heard about it, and it says something about like people that don't want to work will get like a certain amount of money or something crazy like that.
All of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth and opportunity, 4 more years of President Donald Trump. 2021 is going to be the biggest economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris?
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is
that's the math.
absolutely not true.
Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He's been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He's been very clear. Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
we need to get Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease,
So they let her
diabetes, breast
finish,
cancer,
but when it came
they're
to
coming for
Pence,
you.
they didn't let her
If
finish.
you love someone who has a
That's
pre-existing
funny.
condition,
Thank you,
they're
Senator
coming for
Harris.
you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence,
Lord.
I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf.
How the heck
And
can
we've
you
seen
change the
record-setting
climate, though?
wildfires in the West.
If the world is going to end, it's just going to end. There's nothing we can do about it.
But man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger.
That's the craziest thing I ever heard. Like, how can you stop the world from doing what it's going to do? If we're dead, then we're dead. The world is going to end. The world's going to end. That's just how it is. There's nothing we can do.
According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. And our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the president signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years. So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment. Now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American
Let me look up the
families
Green New
in
Deal.
their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation. And we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago.
Thank you.
But many of the climate alarmists use hurricanes and wildfires to try and sell the bill of goods of a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put American jobs and American workers first.
Senator Harris, as the Vice President mentioned, you co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress. But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the
No,
Green
he's
New
just
Deal? You have
moving
2 minutes
around.
uninterrupted.
Sure. So, first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are
How can we
being
control
flooded by
wildfires and
Joe has seen
hurricanes?
and talked with the farmers in Iowa.
What are we going to do
whose
about the
entire
hurricanes?
crops have been destroyed because of
Find some way
floods.
to
And so
destroy
Joe
it or
believes
something?
again in science. I'll tell you
Is
something.
that what we're
Since I
going to do?
served when I first got
Because
into
the
Senate
environment,
on the
like,
committee that's
I
responsible
just
for
don't
the
understand
environment.
that.
Do
I
you know
really
this
don't.
administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve.
So let me get this
net,
straight.
zero
So Joe
emissions by
Biden's going
2050,
to say if the
carbon
world is
neutral
going
by
to end in like
2035.
4
Joe
years.
has
So
a
Joe
plan.
Biden and Harris
This
is
is
going to
what
stop
I
us
talk
from
from the
dying
Trump
in 4 years.
administration, and really
That's
has
what they're
been to
saying.
go backward instead of forward. We will also
Please.
re-enter the climate.
If the world is going to end in 4 years
Senator Harris
or
just said
however
that
long it's going
climate
to
change is
end,
an existential
that's
threat.
it. We're done. There's nothing we can do about
Do you think
that.
climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of 4 across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA Today said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored with AOC when she submitted it in the Senate. And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit America to the Paris Climate Accord. Look, the American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
President.
4 million
Thank you, Vice
American
President.
business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost jobs. President Trump
Thank you,
is going to
Vice
put
President.
America first. He's going to put jobs first, and we're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank
But,
you,
you know, on the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it. What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me? We're looking at people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond because then I want to move on to.
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China through over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000 manufacturing jobs created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through this pandemic. The Green New Deal, your massive new mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time just like it killed jobs.
I just need to respond very briefly.
15 seconds and
Thank
we'll
you.
move.
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have, as our next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. The American people deserve to know that. It's probably why Newsweek magazine said that